Good evening, Park family. I want to start tonight by telling you a quick story. I was hiking in Scotland with two seasoned hill walkers, and about halfway up the peak that we were trying to reach, I started asking them questions. What's the quickest way to the top? What does it look like so I'll know it when I see it? And one of my mentors, Ian, said, "Kevin, slow down. Today is not just about the top. It's about the journey on the way there." In life's journey, if all we're focused on is the day that it all comes to an end, we're going to miss the perspective that is necessary to fully experience the road that God has us on and the people that He has on it with us. We have a couple here tonight that we're going to talk to that have been on a long journey and a difficult one. But I think they're showing us what it looks like to remain focused on that journey and the people around them. Their insights into God's faithfulness and the relationships around them are going to bless you and equip you with the tools necessary for you to stay focused yourself and to look out and take care of the people around you. I want to introduce you all tonight to Sean and Alyssa Layman. We're here with Sean and Alyssa Layman, and we're grateful for them being here with us, guys. Thank you so much just for being here and joining us here on this Wednesday night. It's not Wednesday night right now, but it will be. So excited that you guys are here with us. You guys have been a part of the Park family for a little bit, but you haven't been here. Don't have a long history here. So did you guys grow up in the Tulsa area? Tell us where you're from and kind of how you got to this family at Park here.
I'm from Broken Arrow. I grew up in Broken Arrow. I went to the Broken Arrow Church of Christ. And
I grew up in Bixby. Went to the Bixby Church of Christ in Bixby. Yeah.
So
both born and raised in Tulsa.
Yep. I always knew about the Park.
Yeah. And you've actually done some ministry around town as well.
Yes, yeah, for the Crosstown Church of Christ.
Crosstown, okay. And we're youth ministry there for
3 years.
For 3 years, okay.
Yep, that was good times.
It was.
Yeah.
Good season.
Yeah. What else has filled y'all's days, and how did you guys end up here at Park?
Well, let's see here. Well, we met. I guess we just kind of tell.
Yeah.
Everything. Well, we met like in high school, right before our senior year, at her church's VBS. One of her friends had invited me and to get some of the guys together from my church to come help out. And let's see, I walk into a room and
we were in the same skit room.
Room.
It was the story of baby Moses being put into the basket in the river, and he was Pharaoh and I was Miriam.
So I walk into the room and she's practicing putting him into the river, and her hair catches a fake tree and brings a set down.
I took everything down. The whole
and you knew
set.
Right then that she was the one.
Yep.
Very graceful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Became friends on Facebook after that.
Good old Facebook.
Good old Facebook. That's good.
Yeah, we went to college together at OC.
Yeah.
And I worked for OC for a bit, for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started working for Crosstown.
Yeah, we got married in 2012, and it was
basically a year after you had studied abroad.
Yeah.
In Europe.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was right after we got married. We got married in May, and it was in June that I got tick bites. And
what year was that again?
That was 2012.
2012, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, and I'd always had some health issues growing up. It was always like, I was sick, or it was a mono-like virus, and we didn't ever have real answers, or I had stomach problems, so we'd do tests, and everything was normal. And so I was living with symptoms a lot of my childhood, but I was still functioning. I felt like I was normal. I thought everything I was experiencing was normal at the time.
So you're trying to carry on life as normal in those years.
Yeah.
And then 2012, things changed a little bit with that.
Yeah, we got married and we were fishing with Sean's parents in Arkansas, and I got 2 teeny tiny tick bites. They were the size of poppy seeds. They were so small I didn't even realize they were ticks. It took, I think, 6 months before I realized that they had been tick bites, because so I got the tick bites, and then it was about a month after that I started having mood swings and dealing with depression and not feeling like myself, and then I was feeling fatigued, and then by September I was in the emergency room for full body pain. And then I started running fevers and all of the symptoms of the things that I'd kind of had in childhood, so the stomach issues or trouble standing for a really long time. All of a sudden it was 10 times worse. And it was by that October of 2012 that then I couldn't go to my classes at OC anymore. We were finishing out our senior year at OC, and
you were in a wheelchair then by then.
Yeah, it was by the end of that year, anytime I left the apartment, I had to use a wheelchair. I was just so debilitated, so sick and weak, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. I was seeing doctors, running all these tests, and it wasn't until I think November that I think it was my granddad was like, I heard something from a family member about Lyme disease. Have you ever had any tick bites? And I went, I remember those weird bug bites that I had way back in June. And so we did testing and figured out that that's what it was. It was Lyme disease, and that it had gone systemic. And I started treatment around that time.
So how are you feeling this time just about just your whole situation? Lots of pain, but what were you doing internally during this time? How are you processing all this?
It was terrifying because, I mean, my entire world just flipped completely upside down. And like I said, I'd always dealt with health issues, but I pushed through so much, and I was always still able to. And then all of a sudden I couldn't. And I can remember that, I think it was like January of the next year of 2013, I had 4 classes left until I was supposed to graduate from OC. And it was like, okay, can I do this from the couch? And I couldn't. And it was like, what's going on? And I started doing treatments and just continued to decline. And it was one of those things where you just keep asking yourself, and you just keep thinking like, okay, in a few weeks I'll be better. Surely I'll be better. I've been sick for how long now? Okay. Mm-hmm. And then it just didn't happen. I just kept getting worse.
So Sean, as a husband, and even really a new husband, how are you processing all of this as it was happening?
Oh man, yeah, it was definitely scary, and like we just mentioned, the year before she had gone to Europe and studied abroad and for a whole semester, and she was traveling the entire time and walking and all the things that entails. And then to see her go from that to being in a wheelchair and being either on the couch or in bed, really you were only able to get like to the bathroom and back. And that's what we dealt with actually in that first year of marriage, that we were living. Like I said, this is when I was working for OC, also my senior year as resident director there, and so we had this tiny apartment.
In the freshman boys dorm.
In the freshman boys dorm,
right there, nestled in there,
in Warlick Hall.
So he was doing that and doing school. And so because I was so sick.
But we also, with that, we also found mold in our apartment. You had to move out.
There was mold in the apartment, and I couldn't.
How did I deal with it? I'm not well.
Not well.
To be honest. It was terrifying. And I was honestly to the point where I was, even with, you struggling with like depression and stuff, on top of just sickness itself, I was completely scared of losing you. Mm. Just because you were getting so bad so quickly and not knowing what's going on. So I wasn't coping well. Mm-hmm. But I've always kind of shut off at some point with things, and I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm describing it well, but I've never been good at expressing how I feel about things. So how did I deal with it? We had good friends. We relied on family.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, all those things provided by God. And so
Yes.
I don't think I communicated how I felt or my fears of that even fully when we were going through it.
Yeah.
So,
He was very protective of me, and knowing that I was struggling so much that it was like if we were struggling financially, which we were always struggling financially because all these medical bills and me not being able to work, and, resident director job doesn't really pay a lot.
Really?
Really?
Shocking.
It's
I
shocking.
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
but it was a job where I was able to, for the most part, be home.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to be there and take care of her.
And I was that first year, really probably the first 2 years, I think, of our marriage.
Yeah, probably a year and a
During
half.
the weekdays, I was in Tulsa with my parents.
Treatments and stuff.
Doing treatments and seeing doctors. And my mom was taking care of me because Sean had classes during the day, and he had, the resident director job. And I was just so sick and needed so much help so we did that. And then my mom or my dad would drive and meet Sean halfway between Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and we'd spend the weekends together. And it was like, okay, how do we reconnect on the weekends after not,
Being together.
it was really
yeah.
difficult. It wasn't what we expected for our marriage
Right.
at all.
So, you guys have been, up to this point, faithful Christians for a little while anyway. I mean, you both grew up in church,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and so the idea of God in your life is not new.
No.
But then, how do you process now a relationship with God in the midst of all this?
It changed everything.
Yeah. It was hard. Like it was.
What specific things? No,
It was hard.
Honestly, it was a real struggle at times to say, God, I know you're providing and being faithful for us, but this is still happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it for me was learning to have a more genuine relationship with God, and looking a lot at the Psalms, and reading when David would cry out to God, and when he would say, I'm scared, or I'm hurting, or where are you, or what's happening. And I think so much of my faith growing up, I didn't need to explore that side of my faith very much. It's all kind of, and so it was a very different turn that my faith took, and my prayers started just becoming more of just a constant dialogue.
Yeah.
Where it was just like, I'm hurting, I'm
What kind of things
struggling.
did you find yourself asking God for during this time?
Of course, always asking for healing, always asking
Yeah.
for healing, always asking for answers, for like financial solutions to kind of make things happen, to be led to the right doctors, the right treatments.
Yeah.
All of those things were kind of the constant that you're asking,
Yeah.
but then it becomes so much deeper than that, and it's more about like, help me get through this day, help me find the joy, help me find something when I can't get off the couch and I'm wearing sunglasses inside because even just any light coming through the curtains was too bright. Like, what can I find to laugh about? And that was something that we always have held on to with our marriage, is we're always laughing. We still were. And that was one of the things that I'm so thankful for about Sean, is that he would always make me laugh. Even when I was hurting, he was always making me laugh. And so those were kind of the prayers. It was like, help me find the joy, help me find the patience, the strength, teach me something through this, help me learn something, help me reach someone else, help me connect with someone. Just those things that help you find the meaning in your life, and to realize that even though I'm suffering and I'm not doing the things that I thought I would be doing, I'm not using the spiritual gifts I thought I would be using, how can I be used? How are you using me? How am I growing? It was all so much evolving.
Yeah.
I think for me and for my prayers on my side and the things that I asked for, I usually was asked, to be her rock, and relief for you, and of course healing, all those things we said, but even as temporary relief, and seeing how that on days when you were good, because it was that roller coaster, so sometimes you'd have a good day where she didn't feel as bad, and so I prayed for just more good days. But mostly I just prayed for the strength to be there, to be the provider.
Yeah.
And
so even leading up to today, this is not a journey that has been totally wrapped up and it's finished and set behind you. So how, in what other ways have you guys seen God answer prayers in the midst of it all?
I'd say, I believe I've been blessed with the jobs that I've had.
Yeah.
That like I said, that first job, while I didn't pay diddly squat,
it was enough.
It was enough to get by, and it was enough to be able to. Eventually moved out of Warlick Hall and into the apartments, and she was able to be with me all the time.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing blessing.
So exciting.
Yes, our 30-year marriage was like the first year of marriage we actually got to live together full time.
Love it.
And but that just even moving over the apartments, that was one. We said we struggled with money, and just because of medical bills and not making much working that job, but. When it got the most stressful, when I there's nowhere for me to turn, because I tried not to burden her with those things, which a lot of times probably didn't help with communication. But
I'm sure you're the only ones that's ever struggled with that. So,
Right.
So you'll have to tell us about all that later.
But money would literally just show up.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. We'd have the freshman boys in the dorm just raised money for us, and we were getting to the point where we were we don't know what we're gonna do. We have this huge, financial need, and we don't know what we're gonna do. And then all of a sudden, they were knocking on our door, and they were we raised all this money for you. We're oh wow, that's so amazing. And then just so many times like that. And then my parents were a huge help and blessing to us. They were able to pay for the majority of my medical bills, and still are and still do. And so that allowed us to get by, and for me to be able to see doctors that I would never have been able to see. And that's one of the tricky things with Lyme disease is a lot of the doctors that treat insurance won't cover, and so it's all out of pocket. And you're looking at spending an hour with a doctor, and it's $500, and then it just, and I got really bad in 2012, and so it's 2019, so it's been 7 years, and just that constant accumulation was a lot. But there were so many times, like you said, where all of a sudden a family friend that we hadn't spoken to or seen in years would send us a check for $1,000 that just came out of nowhere, and we were
just totally blindside us.
And those were those
we
things
never asked,
that when there weren't any answers, it was those little things that are huge things, that it was God saying, I'm taking care of you. I'm not going to let you fall. I'm taking care of you. And that was so huge, so helpful and encouraging.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So God has been faithful at each step of the way, is what it seems. Tell us a little bit about your interactions with other people. How has your community supported you in ways that are helpful? Or otherwise, what's that looked like on your journey of now? How many years are we talking about now? So from 2012, So now we're talking a full 9 years. Nope, that's 7 years.
I was like,
I'm really good at math. A full 7 years here.
Yes.
And so tell us what your community's been like. You gave a couple examples, but how else has it been? What's it been like just living with this in the midst of community?
Yeah, so much, obviously, so much changed, and we had to learn that there are relationships that are lasting, and there are relationships that have seasons. And that it doesn't mean that those friends or those people don't love and care about you, or that they're not praying for you or thinking about you, but those aren't the people that God's putting in your life to weather the storm with you. They're going to love you from afar, but they can't be right there in it with you. And that's painful for them. It was painful for us. And just some of that just kind of natural shifting of when I got sick, we were starting our senior year of college, and then watching all of our friends graduate and get married and have kids and just start their careers, all this stuff that we were expecting. And I think so much for a while it felt like life was on hold, and it was like, when I get better, then I'll pick right back up where I left off. And some of the grieving process with that was realizing that I'm still living my life. Like, this is not just wasted time. I'm living my life, and it will never be the way it was. I'm not going to pick back up, at that point. And, you're still moving and growing, and so are your friends, and so are your family. And there were times when we had friends and family members who were really understanding and really got it and were able to be there for us in a big way. And then, like I said, we had some that kind of backed off a little bit, that they didn't really understand, or they didn't know what to say or what to do. And all of a sudden, it was so different for us. We'd always been so involved in church and in mentoring, and we were youth interns in the summer. I was a youth intern with the Bixby Church one summer. We both were. I was at Broken Arrow one summer. I was working at a daycare in Oklahoma City. Like, I was always with kids, always hands-on, always moving, and that changed. And not using those spiritual gifts, I started to worry about what people were thinking of me, that I was letting people down by not being able to use those spiritual gifts that I'd been using. And it kind of became time just one-on-one with God that was just so different, and still being so involved and interconnected with community, but in such a different way, not being able to go to church every week, not being able to meet a friend for coffee, and having to cancel plans at the last minute, like thinking, okay, this day I'm going to have the energy, and then that day comes and it's like, I can't. And it just all shifted, but we made new friends, and I made a lot of connections online through social media and messaging with other people that had chronic illnesses or whose family members had chronic illnesses. And so that was really neat to be able to kind of connect with people that way.
Sean, supporting a wife through this, also in the midst of community, also in the midst of things shifting and changing, what were the challenges of that, just as a husband?
I think one of the things, like I said, I think I'm going to keep passion on this, but with the jobs I was blessed with, I was then, after OC being hired, I went and worked at Crosstown for 3 years. We got out of the Oklahoma City area, came here to where her entire family is, and so that we were able to have her mom comes over, still does, every single day that I'm at work. And that moving and shifting, we were able to move and shift to a place where we had, I would say, even more support. Because when God led us from a place where I felt like I was doing all by myself to a place where we had support.
Wow.
And not that I didn't have family up there, but... And not that they didn't help from time to time, but it was just a different way we could have
Yeah.
consistent help, because they had their own families, and
Right.
but your mom was able to be there every day for us and help in the house and help get you to appointments, but like then came down here to a whole different community, working for a church.
Mm-hmm.
And there was parts about that were amazing, and there was parts about it that, of course, weren't with any job. There's gonna be things that are great and things that are struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me, my favorite part was the kids, and when they would come over, when I was able to get them to come over to the house, and time what they were able to spend with Alyssa. And when you're there and you're in the middle of it, you also, being in the ministry field, your focus is God and being with God every day, and it's easier to have that focus. At times, there's still times when that's still hard, but I think that was a huge blessing for me to be able to try to. It gave me a chance to try to even recenter myself.
Oh, that's good. What would you guys say to people who are around people with chronic illness? What are helpful things to say, or to even just little phrases, and what are maybe some unhelpful? Surely you guys have experienced both
Oh,
sides
goodness.
of helpful and unhelpful
Yes.
interactions within your community. So what would you say would be maybe one unhelpful thing that you've gotten a lot, and maybe what is actually a good helpful and just genuine interaction that's actually helpful and appreciative?
Well, unhelpful. The question, working, at the church every Sunday and Wednesday, especially because Alyssa couldn't be there a lot because of how bad she had gotten, and then when she was there,
Yeah.
was the question, "How are you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
And when you get asked that question all the time, and usually the answer is the same or worse, it's not very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It
And
doesn't.
that's the one that just rolls off the tongue whenever you
Yeah.
come in somebody that's had any struggle of any kind. It just rolls off. How are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it turns out that's maybe not an incredibly helpful question.
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, and so many people ask, "How are you doing?" But they only want to hear the good, which is great. Like, we all want to hear the good, but if you're worse, then it's like, okay, how do I put a positive spin on this? And you're like, I'm already trying to do that for myself in my own head every day, all the time. Like, how do I have that positive mindset? How do I have hope? How do I be optimistic? But how do I also be real? How do I be honest? How do I make sure that I'm reaching out to that community when I need support, by letting them know this is how I'm really doing. I'm really struggling.
What's been some maybe interactions you've had that have been really positive and helpful that other people we might be able to learn from?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of just what's coming to my mind is kind of that co-suffering, like being willing to go there with someone and to just give them a hug and say, I know it's hard, and I see you, and I think about you, and I'm proud of you, and that I think that means so much, to just kind of be seen and heard.
Some of our most encouraging moments have been, especially when we run into people that we know that have also been suffering, and when you talk to them, you really are able to understand more on a legitimate level of, this is what we're dealing with. I know, of course I can't ask that of everybody, but
Of course.
but those have been some of the most, I think, uplifting community times, is when we're around people that have also gone through suffering.
Yeah. Well, just in talks with you guys, I recognize that you guys fully understand how present the faithfulness of God has been with you in every moment. And you mentioned a couple of words that I want to go back to. You mentioned the word patience. What does the word patience mean to you all in light of everything you've experienced?
Patience it's a constant. It's a state of being, and I think that's not the way I would have thought of it before.
What is your source of patience? Where does that come from?
That's all Jesus all the time, is that patience. And I think that's something that I learned a lot going through this, was that I kind of had this idea with my faith that, if I was faithful to God, then things would work out. God uses everything for good. It's all just going to work out. And then when you really strip that belief down and you look at people who are suffering, you look at other countries with children who are suffering, you go, okay, well then I must be doing something right and they must be doing something wrong.
Right.
And there's a problem there
Right.
That's huge. It all kind of crumbles, and you realize that's not real faith, thinking that, if I'm good enough, that then, and that's not who Jesus is. And I think realizing that, I don't have a magic savior that's going to instantly take my pain away and take every problem away from me. Not that he doesn't have the ability, but that what I do have in Jesus, it's that co-suffering. It's knowing that he's had the human experience. He died on the cross for our sins. He knows what it feels like to be in despair and in pain, and that you have a source of hope in salvation and in heaven. And then just those everyday things, fruits of the Spirit, the patience and peace and joy that doesn't make sense, that trying to explain to people that you're so sick and you're so miserable and you're so much pain, but you're still joyful. People that don't have that, they're like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah. So in other words, I've heard that we've asked actually a couple other people this summer the same thing. It's been really powerful. What does the word hope mean for you guys? Start with Sean. What does hope mean for you guys now?
Now, okay. I mean,
or at any point in this, what role has hope played in your journey?
Oh man, I was about to talk about patience. Now I gotta talk about hope. Okay, yeah. I mean, growing up a Christian, you always have hope of the future, hope of being with God one day, hope in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But going through suffering, perceiving suffering, watching suffering, there's hope in the next minute, there's hope in the next hour, there's hope in the next day, there's hope when you wake up, and that, that God is still there right beside you when you wake up. That he's there to go through those struggles with you every second of every day, and to watch and to see, and when someone's going through all those things, he's right there beside you. I think I think I've told you this. I think so. But I remember, even just when I was, there was a moment when I was working at OC, and I had gone over to my brother's house, and I was driving back, and I was so frustrated with God. Mm-hmm. Because, it was not easy. I was so frustrated that this is what we had to go through every day, and that prayer wasn't as much. It wasn't a happy prayer. It wasn't, God, give me hope. God, do this. I was like, God, why are you letting this happen? God, why? I'm mad at you mm-hmm. that we're going through this.
Yeah.
And there was a moment in that prayer at the end where I've never had this happen before in my Christian walk, where I literally just felt something lifted off my shoulders. Mm-hmm. And it was so powerful, and I've tried to carry that moment since then. And when I get frustrated or when I get angry, which I do, because, it's still every day.
Mm-hmm.
But I have that hope that God is going to be there to give me the strength and to relieve the burden,
Mm-hmm.
and to feel that lifted off my shoulders. And that, like I said, He's right there every single day, and that's hope.
Yeah.
So you guys have dealt with this in a number of ways. Alyssa, you had written something not long ago that just kind of helped you process. Would you mind reading
Sure.
some of what you wrote
Yeah, I
and
would
just
love
share with
to.
us just kind of your journey as you were able to process it?
I would love to. So, writing it's always been an outlet for me, and kind of a way where, like, writing my prayers, writing my thoughts, I kind of can work through. And so that's kind of what I was doing with this. So, spiritual healing is by far the most important thing. The physical healing will come, or it won't. That's the biggest blessing, and also one of the hardest truths of being a Christian. Knowing that Jesus suffers alongside you, that He will provide you peace that surpasses understanding and joy in the midst of the pain, that His grace is sufficient for you, that you'll find strength in your weakness, and that even if the physical healing doesn't come on earth, that we're still blessed, seen, and loved by God immeasurably, who is fulfilling His promises in us. Heaven will be amazing, but waiting isn't easy. My hope and prayer was and is always that the physical healing will come on earth and will come soon. When I read my posts on Facebook from a year ago, before I became pregnant with our daughter, or knew that I was pregnant with our daughter, Isla, I was doing my best to be confident in the Lord, but I was so afraid and exhausted. I trusted Him to make a way where it felt like there was none, and He always found a way to take care of us and provide for us. But I had no idea how He was going to do it. I was prepared to keep waiting and suffering, knowing that His will for me was good, but I also doubted His goodness at times, because hoping while suffering is hard. You constantly get your hopes up so many times only to be let down again, and it's human nature to start seeking doubt to cushion the fall when the answers still don't come. And then we found out that I was unexpectedly pregnant with Isla, and we were so excited and terrified and thrilled, but it was also so unexpected, and I had no idea what my body would do. And I improved, and so that was so exciting. Looking back now, it's so beautiful, the path that God had laid out for me and for us, the beauty coming that I simply couldn't see. And it's still hard. I still hurt every day, and I still struggle. And I still struggle with trusting God. I still have more emotional healing to do from childhood sexual abuse, and at times I've been afraid, and I've continued to live in fear and avoid God's goodness. I'm still a sinful human that even in the midst of the miracle of our little daughter, doubted that God would provide for her and for us, and that He would keep her safe, her health, her body, her future. I know He holds the future, and I know that He is good, but I also know that beauty comes from ashes, and we aren't promised a struggle-free life. I struggled to trust Him even while her existence was a miracle. I doubted God. I still struggle with needing control, but God has never failed me yet. My only hope is Jesus, and my source of hope, salvation, strength, and joy is ever overflowing. And then I wrote down a passage that gave me great comfort and inspiration, and that was Luke 8:40 through 48. It's where it talks about this woman that's been suffering for 12 years with an illness, and she reaches out and touches Jesus's cloak in a crowd, and he didn't even see her, but he goes, "Hold on, I felt power go out from me," and he stops to look around and he sees her there. So that's that passage. I feel like I've been so much like that woman, this woman who suffered for 12 years, who spent everything she had trying to find healing and relief. Like her, I had come to a place of trusting Jesus, trusting that Jesus absolutely has the power to heal me and heal me fully, but still coming to Him a little hidden, a little afraid to speak to Him, a little afraid to ask for the healing I need, but knowing if I can just reach out and touch his cloak, he'll provide it. But Jesus saw the woman, and he sees me. He saw me, and Jesus saves. Jesus heals. Jesus wants a relationship with me. My favorite song that I kind of came upon over the years is called I Am Healed by Diane Michelle, and I had that song as my ringtone every morning. It reminds me so much of Luke 8:48, and I got a sign made that I put in our bedroom right across from our bed where I can see it every day that says those lyrics. It says, I am healed, I know I am, for my God says I am. And the words Luke 8:48 to remind me of the moment when Jesus said, daughter, your faith has made you well, go in peace. And I also love the Message loose interpretation of that verse, which says, daughter, you took a risk trusting me, and now you're healed and whole. Live well, live blessed. So it's just that constant reminder for me of God's character, of his faithfulness, his goodness, his trustworthiness, and to remind me to never stop reaching out to touch the cloak of Jesus, but also to go a step further, to be unafraid to speak to God, to trust him with more than healing, but with my whole heart, and to be in close relationship with him again. So that's kind of a little bit of a summary of where I've gone spiritually and where we are now, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and something we haven't touched on yet, which is Isla.
Isla.
Yes, you have a beautiful, stunningly beautiful baby girl, Isla. So congratulations on her. She's wonderful. And so what I'm hearing is that healing, while we desire for physical healing is found not always in the physical body feeling perfectly well, but experiencing a wholeness in yourself that's only found in the faithfulness of God on a daily basis.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's a good way to put it.
It is. Yeah. And that's where that shift of what just faith looks like, what faith is in general, just changed so much for us. And I'm not thankful for my suffering, but I'm thankful for the wisdom that I've gained and that we've gained, and that growth and that closeness with God, and just recognizing some of the lies that I was believing and holding on to as truths with my faith that was keeping things so much more shallow, and then being able to really go deeper and look at what faith looks like every day, what faith looks like when you don't have answers.
Yeah. Tell me, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing all over the place, really. We're
Okay.
Well, you're
all over the place.
You're new parents, so that partially answers that question.
Oh my goodness, yes. We have our little Isla girl. She's 6 months old, and she's so precious.
Yes.
We
yes.
love her so much.
Yes.
She's wonderful. And I have had some improvement, which has been wonderful. During pregnancy and even since having her, it's like I have this newfound energy that I've been able to take care of her in ways that I wouldn't have been able to before. I can change diapers, and I can give her baths a lot of the time, and I can pick her up and carry her and do those things that I wouldn't have been able to do before.
Before, I was having to help you shower.
Yeah, I couldn't shower on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I was having to wash my hair. My mom was washing my hair.
That's something so small, but it's something you can do by yourself now.
Yeah, now I can do that.
Yeah.
And, like
That's
you said,
exciting.
Yes, but, at the same time, it's like God gave me exactly what I needed in having Isla and being able to take care of her, but then that energy is all being used there, and that's where I want it to be used. But then, I'm still not able to cook or clean, or, after I shower, I have to lay down for 2 hours and rest. And I'm still not working, and I'm still dealing with pain, and a lot of the symptoms, and a lot of my symptoms have kind of been slowly coming back. Recently with postpartum, it's like I was doing so well, and then now it's kind of slowly coming back. And so it's all, I think what I've learned is that healing is not linear, and it's always, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and switch up,
The number of steps.
Yeah, every time. Sometimes it's more this way, sometimes it's more that way.
Well, thank you guys for being, for us, a face of God's faithfulness. You guys have walked a journey that has been long and difficult at times, and joyful at times, and really hard at times, and better at others. But you guys are showing us what it looks like to walk a consistent. If anything in the story is consistent, it's nothing except the faithfulness of God.
Yes.
So many things, so many ups and downs. But I hear it just pour out of you guys, how much you are leaning into that. And so thank you for sharing with us what it looks like to do just that.
Yeah, thanks for letting us. Yeah, it's neat.
I hope what you will leave with tonight is a deeper sense of God's abiding presence and a new perspective on the wholeness that is found in the faithfulness of God. There's no suffering that He does not understand. There's no suffering that is outside of His sovereignty. There's no path of suffering that Jesus is not walking right by your side. So wherever you are in your path, look for the grace that has been extended to you and extended to those around you. Love you all. God bless you. Have a great night.